Welcome to The Explainer. Sometimes a big political story, like a government shutdown, is actually a cover for something even more interesting. And that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're going to see how a crisis in Washington, D.C. ripped the lid off a major power struggle inside one of the biggest unions in the country, the Teamsters. This isn't just about politics, it's about the very soul of a union.
So, where does this all start? Well, it kicks off weeks before the government actually grinds to a halt, with this pretty blunt warning from Senator Bernie Sanders. Right away, you can feel the tension building. It's clear a major fight is brewing in D.C., and the battle lines are being drawn.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with the gridlock in Washington, then check out how labor leadership responded. After that, we dive into the real heart of the story, a challenge from inside the Teamsters. And finally, we'll look at two totally different ideas about what union power should be.
Okay, first things first. Let's set the scene. The whole thing that lit the fuse for this conversation was the federal government shutdown back in October 2025. It's a story we've heard before, right? Political gridlock, real-world consequences. But this time was different.
So look at how this plays out. You've got Sanders firing that warning shot way back in mid-September. Then literally on the brink of the shutdown, the Teamsters president, Sean O'Brien, makes his own statement. Now, these aren't just press releases. These are the first moves in a chess game, and they set up two very, very different ways of seeing this whole mess.
So, with Washington in chaos, everyone starts pointing fingers. It's the blame game. But what's fascinating is that not everyone was pointing in the same direction.
Senator Sanders, for his part, was crystal clear. He said, look, the Republicans control everything, so this is on them, period. He didn't just see it as a political screw-up, he called it a direct attack on the healthcare of millions of working people and seniors. Super specific, super targeted. But then you get the statement from Teamsters President Sean O'Brien. He's angry too, but listen to who he blames. Not a specific party, he blames Congress as a whole. He even says they're playing the same blame and delay game that corporations play. It's a broad condemnation of the entire system.
And this lays it all out, right? You've got these two competing ideas. Sanders is like a surgeon with a scalpel, pointing to a very specific cause, the Republican Party's agenda. O'Brien, on the other hand, is using a sledgehammer, just swinging at Washington and its general dysfunction.
Just when it seemed like those were the only two options, a third voice cut through the noise. And it came from inside the Teamsters union itself. They basically said, hey, everyone, you're all looking in the wrong direction. And this is where we meet a reform movement brewing inside the union, a group calling themselves the Fearless Slate. For them, the government shutdown wasn't the actual problem. No, it was just a symptom of a much deeper sickness inside their own leadership. This group, led by a guy named Richard Hooker Jr., is made up of rank-and-file members. And their argument is explosive. They're saying the reason the union is so vulnerable to political games in D.C. isn't because of Washington. It's because of a failure of leadership at the very top of their own union.
And boom, there it is. That's the mic drop moment. With that one line, they completely changed the conversation. They're saying it doesn't matter who you blame in Washington if your own house isn't in order. The real question is whether the union is even built to have power in the first place.
So what this all comes down to is this massive, fundamental question about what a union is even for. Does power come from making deals with powerful people in D.C., or does it come from the members, from the ground up? The Fearless Slate has a really clear answer. Their whole deal is this idea of member power. They believe a union's true strength doesn't come from a handshake with a politician. It comes from thousands of members who are educated, engaged, and ready to fight for what they believe in. And it's not just talk. Their whole platform is about making this happen. They want members to vote for leaders at every level. They want contract talks to happen out in the open, not behind closed doors. They want to train the next generation of leaders and get members ready to strike if they have to. This isn't just a wish list. It's a plan to fundamentally shift power back to the people on the shop floor.
And they're leveling some really heavy accusations against the current leadership. They claim President O'Brien has cut the Teamsters off from other unions, made deals with politicians who are openly anti-worker, and just gone missing when it was time to fight. They paint a really dark picture of a union run on fear, where members' contracts get sold out. So you might be asking, okay, if the current way isn't working, what's the alternative? What does this ground-up power actually look like? Well, to get a picture of what the Fearless Slate is talking about, we can look at a really interesting example from outside the Teamsters. Let's take a look at Zohran Mamdani's campaign in New York.
because his story is a fantastic example of what the Fearless Slate is pushing for. It's about building political power not by schmoozing the establishment, but by building a real coalition of unions from the bottom up.
Now check this out. Mamdani didn't just get one big endorsement. He went out and earned the support of a whole bunch of different unions. We're talking auto workers, teachers, hotel workers, you name it. And how did he do it? By actually showing up for them, by fighting for their causes. It was a real partnership, not just a photo op.
And that right there is the key difference. This is a model built on solidarity. It's about finding politicians who are already in the fight with you. And that is the complete opposite of a strategy that, as the Fearless Slate argues, just tries to get in good with whoever's in power, no matter what their record is on workers' rights. It's a vision of unions being a political force themselves, not just a pawn in someone else's game.
So at the end of the day, this whole thing, a government shutdown sparking an internal union war, leaves us with this one giant question. The fight for the future of the Teamsters is about way more than just one union. It's really a debate about what it's going to take for working people to build real power in this country. Is it about having friends in high places, or is it about having an army of friends right beside you?